Hi, greetings. It's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and this is the very last video of my public speaking series. And this final video is going to be about speaking in group settings. And I know I've talked about a lot of different varieties of things in public speaking that you really need to consider. So you're going to hear some of these themes kind of emerge. I'm also going to go through giving you some definitions of things for you to consider how to apply as you're working in giving different types of speeches, excuse me, speaking of speaking. And of course, this particular final video is going to kind of sum things up. So I encourage you, if you haven't watched the other videos or you're working on public speaking, to watch some of the other videos in this video series. I also have videos on leadership and videos on small business and marketing, and so a variety of different videos that hopefully can help you. So just check my videos out online. So getting right into this, here's some of the things that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the nature of meetings. We're going to talk about small co-acting groups, discussions, debate, continuums, contemporary forms of discussions, group presenting, and then some leadership things that you should consider, what you should do to prepare, and different sources of leadership and functions, and then styles of leaderships and other theories. And as you know, if you've watched other videos, I've been doing public speaking for about 20 years, and it really is a labor of love. It's something that the more you do, the more comfortable that you get. And so hopefully you find that these videos help you gain some skills and confidence that helps you create a life and career that you truly love. Let's get right into talking about the nature of small meetings and groups. Sometimes there are small co-acting groups, groups where people are getting together maybe in casual settings that they have a specific purpose, and you have to be very clear what that purpose is and help people stay on task. People really need to be able to get to know each other and be able to identify who's in the group and what talents kind of bring. You've probably seen that model about the forming, storming, norming, and then performing. Anyway, in this, people may have different levels of stress and pressure that comes into it. And so you have to be able to consider how can you gain the best knowledge and information and participation out of those group members. Sometimes you're going to have tense conversations because different people's communication styles affect the dynamics of how things go, and so you can have the power to influence other people's way of being too. So in order to enhance group cooperation, sometimes you need to be very tactful. You should always keep a smile on your face, be enthusiastic, friendly. As much as possible, try to create a democratic environment where everybody feels like they're actively involved and truly has a bearing on the decisions that are going to be made. And they should authentically have those types of situations. Try to share leadership by honoring people where they are. Recognize that you may not be the formal leader in the situation until you can take leadership at particular times, but then you can allow other people to lead at the same time. It's always best when you do your research and know what you're talking about. Some people just talk for the sake of talking, and some people try to be experts on everything. I hate those people, and most people do. So really try to be as authentic as possible. If you don't have something to say that adds value, don't just contribute for the sake of contributing. Use people's time wisely. When discussions and debates happen, it really is important for you to focus on the situation and be able to ask questions with a many-sided approach. Recognize that I like to say things like, I see things a little bit differently, or let me see if I get your point. You're telling me this and this. Did I get that right? Here's how I see things differently. Do you mind if I share? So sometimes you have to be able to help facilitate a collegial and respectful conversation. Discussions don't have to be as hot as they can be when there's a debate. Both people or every person involved in the debate has the power to influence how that discussion goes. So things can start as a discussion and then escalate into a debate, but then they can come down into a resolution stage where decisions are possible. But it really all starts by being able to identify what the problem is, being very clear in defining what all the moving pieces are in there, what are the variables that are involved, and analyze how things go together. I mean, create a situation where people can openly discuss the situation and be able to analyze what are the alternatives that are in here. Weigh out the consequences as you go along. When decisions are made, you're going to have to be able to influence those by being able to advocate for different alternatives. Sometimes the person that speaks louder wins, but that person is human too and very capable of making mistakes. So sometimes you have to come back to the discussion table and then be able to have a democratic vote if possible, so that everybody involved feels like they can be involved, and then they can see how other people feel about those types of situations when decisions are being made. So some basic discussion definitions that are out there are dialogue. This is when two people are interacting. And sometimes it can be done in front of an audience. Sometimes there's a panel of people, and this is when there are 3 to 7 people that are pursuing a common goal, and they're having an informal conversation, and that there's a special climate that comes about that. And this is really to help promote interaction. A symposium is a small group, about 3 or 5 people that have special knowledge about different aspects in a broad topic. There are information sharing groups that involve staff meetings, group studies, and then various workshops. And then, of course, there are problem-solving groups, and these are committees, conferences, and governing councils. And usually they're closed to non-members. In whatever kind of meeting that you're having, you really probably should have a standard printed agenda, so that everybody knows what's going to be talked about and discussed. Really being able to define the problem and limiting mutual groupthink. People really need to be able to share ideas freely, but they need to be able to be clear on sticking to the topic. They should be able to analyze the problem by determining what are the separate elements, what's the history here, what are some of the causes that are involved. Establishing criteria for solutions and recognizing limitations should be done. You should be able to generate and test solutions and go through brainstorming and doing research if possible. So this may be several different meetings in order to do that. And so you have to be very clear on what the guidelines are for time constraints. Choose and implement and then monitoring are things that really need to be done, and sometimes those are forgotten about. So really making sure that when a plan is put in place, that there's someone or people that are monitoring results so that things can be adjusted as needed. Almost all the time, nothing goes exactly as planned. So sometimes doing role plays kind of help flush out some of those things that could happen in the larger picture. So generally speaking, it's not wise if you're a large organization to put a blanket policy without trying things in smaller groups. So again, role-playing has a lot of power in helping people understand some of the different dynamics of a particular situation. Brainstorming is a technique that's used when a group of people want to generate a lot of ideas. And so what's key in brainstorming is that you should not criticize. You should allow people to just kick out a bunch of ideas. I've got a friend that often says, I'm just throwing out ideas. We don't have to act on these ideas. I simply want to remind you these are just some things that we might want to consider. And I like that approach. So you should not be criticizing people when they're sharing ideas, or you're going to shut them down. You should be able to consider everybody's ideas and really listen deeply to what people are saying. So you can prepare by recognizing who's going to be involved, Who is the audience that's going to be there? Who are the speakers that are going to be there? What does the physical setup look like that's going to be best for that particular situation? How are seats arranged? Are people standing? What kind of room is going to be there? Who will be participating? Are there going to be speeches brought into it, or public speakers that are brought into the situation? And do you have a prepared agenda and formal statements that are prepared? Leadership is really important to consider. You got to identify who the assigned leader is, consider who is going to be moderating, if anybody, and sometimes there's just going to be a leaderless group where people are just acting together, and so all these things have to be considered, and it's always important to be proactive and visualize what the situation looks like. You should do your best in helping promote a healthy and democratic communication climate. And you do that by being proactive and recognize, wow, you look very angry. Let's talk about this. Nobody should be angry in this event. You should keep your voice at a level that keeps people calm, cool, and collected, because we all have the power to influence other people. So as leaders, ultimately, we have to be thinking about the goal. We need to be thinking about the relationships with other people, and we also need to be thinking about the procedures and policies that are in place at the same time. So all of these must come together in order to help create meetings where things are getting done. So some procedures: review the purpose of the meeting, consider each of the members that are involved, decide the degree of formality of the meeting, consider time constraints, and make sure that there's reasonable participation and people are being responsible in their participation too, for that matter. With interpersonal relationships, you've got to establish rapport, be able to make sure you're controlling your emotions, establish communication and psychological contracts. You set the climate by the way that you interact, so make sure that you are properly resolving conflict, and you can't be the only one talking, but also you need to help regulate people who are too talkative or too silent. So a lot of things go into play when meetings get started. There are lots of leadership theories out there, and you have to recognize your own comfort with leadership theory. You could be a laissez-faire leader, where these are people who are participative, but maybe there's really no control, and that's kind of their attitude that they put out there. Or maybe one of the best ways to lead is be a democratic leader, and that's being very participative, helping people be able to feel like they're contributing, and so help facilitating the ideas of other people in the decision-making process. And then finally there's autocratic leadership, and these are people who are essentially in control, and they're directing the outcomes of the work. So you can be very, very clear on where you are in that process of choosing a specific leadership style that's going to help create the best outcomes possible. Some leadership theories suggest that trait theories, that sometimes there is the best leader that has the specific traits to help lead a particular situation, and it also recognizes that leaders are born and not made. So people's quality of their leadership style really came from their upbringing and influenced by other people. People need to sometimes be experts, and so you might have to have a functional leadership approach. And then there's situational leadership theory, which means that you need to adjust your leadership style for the particular situation. Of course, I have full videos on different leadership styles, but I wanted to share those because you have the power to influence outcomes in the meeting no matter what your title is, but you kind of have to recognize what type of situation you're in and recognize the style of leadership that's there, or the kind of style that's needed for that. So the more experience that you have in these types of situations, the better things get. So let's summarize. There are four main characteristics of coactive groups. They share a common goal and purpose. They utilize interdependence. They are interactive in their communication, and there's a tendency to feel pressure in order to conform. And so you have to recognize that in small groups, people need to watch their attitudes and their behaviors, because that affects outcomes. Control, judging other people. Judgment pushes people away. So you have to have an open mind. You need to be able to facilitate the communication, and sometimes setting norms helps, and sometimes giving training on what effective communication looks like. Of course, I've got several videos on that too. Be able to make sure that things are being discussed in a cooperative way. There are always going to be many different sides, and just because you feel strongly about your side, it doesn't mean that there aren't other sides that really should be considered too. Remember, a house takes four walls essentially to hold up the roof, and each of those walls has a different perspective. Debates are usually just two-sided, and two people really feel strongly about those things, so being able to collect the right facts and be able to listen to the other perspectives and help facilitate that in a respectful way will help. Problem solving really is best when people are sharing information effectively and openly, and so you can help facilitate that. Having the right agenda and the right venue is really important. So being able to make those considerations really help. And then your leadership style helps influence outcomes too. Recognizing that sometimes there's no official leader, and so you can help facilitate the ideas of other people, but making sure that the interpersonal relationships are truly effective in the way that you exude your ideas and your leadership style. So I'm giving you a lot of information here to consider in this final speaking video. This one is on speaking in group settings, and we each have the power to influence other people by our way of being. So hope you've enjoyed the video and have taken something away of value. I encourage you to watch the other videos that I've put here on YouTube. And more than anything else, I hope that you have a great day, because only you get to choose how you feel about it.